What many persons would have dismissed as beer parlor discussion was confirmed by the Department of State Services, DSS, on Wednesday last week. And that is a plot by those the DSS referred to as misguided political actors to foist an interim government on the nation. Rather, a democratically elected president come May 29th this year.
Of course, Juma, now such information, or if you like, red alert coming from the nation's top secret service is not one to be brushed aside. But the good thing is that the DSS indicated in the statement last week that they had identified already key players in the ongoing plot to set up an interim government in the country.
Now, little wonder, in one of the reactions to the red alert from the DSS, the Inter-Party Advisory Council joined other Nigerians to challenge the nation's secret police to name and arrest those plotting for an interim government in the country, as nobody should be seen to be above the law of the land.
No question about that. We are, for instance, witnesses to what played out in the United States, where Donald Trump posed to be a threat to America's democracy and how American institutions have risen to the occasion in defense of democracy in that country. The question, however, is will Nigeria's institutions of state fold their hands or look the other way and allow undemocratic elements truncate Nigeria's hard-earned democracy?
Pertinent questions there, Kingsley. And just like the DSS indicated, an interim government is not only an aberration but unconstitutional and is capable of plunging the nation into an avoidable constitutional crisis, as it will alter the constitutional cycle for peaceful transition of power from one government to another.
Now, many Nigerians in their reactions have not minced words to assert that an interim government of whatever coloration is unacceptable because it amounts, as we just indicated, to a travesty of the constitutional provisions which stipulate how elections are to be conducted and how those who emerge winners, of course, get to be sworn in on the agreed dates or agreed timetable for the transition program. And those who are dissatisfied with the outcome of elections, of course, become litigants challenging the results of the polls. And some, of course, have sought constitutional redress in the tribunal. So, who is flying the kite of an interim administration?
Exactly, Casey, a question on the mind of so many Nigerians, and even the chairman, Presidential Transition Council and Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, recently made it clear that the presidential transition process is on course and there would be peaceful transfer of power from President Muhammadu Buhari to President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Now, the Presidential Transition Council is already working for the success of the May 29th inauguration. This is through three broad committees that have been further broken into some 13 subcommittees to ensure a smooth transition. And the Council has made it clear that the ongoing litigation would not scuttle the transition timetable.
So, what are the motives of the alleged plotters, and will the state fold its arms and just watch? Now, these are issues we shall interrogate with our panel of guests as we discuss threats to May 29th inauguration on Good Morning Nigeria. This is the first edition in the week. I am Jumma Yusuf, welcoming you to the program.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Jumai to also welcome you to the program. Of course, we are broadcasting, as always, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Well, this is the week that is known as the Passion Week in Christendom, as the Holy Week, also leading up to the celebration of Easter come next Sunday. Yesterday was Palm Sunday, and of course there were many activities in Christendom on this occasion. The Easter celebration will mark the end of the Lenten season, and our Muslim brothers and sisters are still on with the Ramadan. We'll have our complimentary segments in the course of the program, and these include newspaper review and business. For now, here is Comfort Amodu, who has the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Comfort.
Good morning, Kinsley and Jumai. You're looking beautiful.
Thank you.
All right, the head of the Civil Service of the Federation, Fola Shade Yemi Eson, says the federal government will continue to do its best to ensure that the welfare of workers is given the desired attention. This is contained in a message to the 2022 separate and joint meetings of the National Public Service Negotiating Council.
Our commitment in this regard will enhance and sustain strong and collaborative industrial relations. It is through the lines of effective communication that everybody wins. We should continue to dialogue on issues that are concerned with the welfare of workers with a view to striking a balance on best options available.
And the attention of the Presidential Transition Council, PTC, has been drawn to a fake Twitter handle at Transition NGR created by unscrupulous persons since April 2020, even before the establishment and inauguration of the council. Director Information in the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Willie Bassi, in a press release states that the Presidential Transition Council has nothing to do with the fake Twitter handle, as approval for the establishment of the Presidential Transition Council was given by the President in February this year, and Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, subsequently inaugurated the Council. And the statement notes that the fake Twitter handle reveals as an irresponsible and calculated attempt by unscrupulous persons to disseminate inaccurate and tainted information to unsuspecting members of the public. For the avoidance of doubt, the authentic Twitter account of the Presidential Transition Council is at FGN-PTC. The public is urged to discountenance the fake Twitter account and use the official account handle of PTC for genuine and accurate information on the activities of the transition program. In other news, the Zamfara State Police Command has confirmed the abduction of 2 female students of the Federal University, Gusau, by some suspected terrorists. A statement issued by the spokesperson for the command, Mohammed Shehu, says the armed terrorists broke into a rented female hostel located near the university campus, where they locked up 2 civilian guards on duty, collected their handsets, and later abducted the 2 female students, both of microbiology department of the institution. Upon the receipt of the reports, the police tactical team moved to the scene, but the hoodlums had already fled with the victims to an unknown destination. In statement further says Zamfara State Commissioner of Police Yusuf Kolo has deployed reinforcement to complement the ongoing operation to safely rescue the abducted students and arrest the perpetrators of the heinous crime. The All Progressives Congress in Rivers State has confirmed the release of its documents that were earlier seized by the police command over the weekend. Governorship candidate of the party, Tonye Cole, who confirmed the release, notes it will aid their preparation for the election tribunal in Rivers State.
All the lawyers were released on self-recognition. The assistant staff, ad hoc staff that were working with them, support staff, were released on bail, and the party chairman stood in for them to take them out. What we had to make sure was necessary to be released where all the evidence are from EC8, EC8A, EC8B, and most people know. If you don't know what that is, these are the agent's copy of the evidence that we had an election.
And the national chairman of the new Nigerian People's Party, Professor Ahmed Rufai Al-Kali, has resigned from office. Professor Al-Kali, who was elected a year ago to lead the affairs of the party, said he's stepping down to give room for proper reorganizing and restructuring to make the NPP a leading political party in Nigeria. Moving on, President Muhammadu Buhari celebrates the victory of Nigerian-born boxer Anthony Joshua over Jermaine Franklin, commending the triumph of the gifted pugilist over a formidable opponent. Extolling the mentality of Joshua, who did not allow personal setbacks and obstacles to dent his resilient spirit, the president says the former three-time world heavyweight champion has demonstrated that by hard work, patience, dedication, persistence, and humility. Those who dare do win. President Buhari hails Joshua for his courage, discipline on and off the ring, and prays that this success will be a stepping stone to one of the greatest comebacks in boxing history. Now, Christians in Abuja, the nation's capital, on Sunday joined their counterparts worldwide to mark Palm Sunday. A day signifies the triumphant entry of Jesus Christ into Jerusalem, marking the beginning of the Passion Week.
So we give glory to God, and today we are encouraging all believers to step into their victory, which the Lord Jesus has given us.
I just pray that with this celebration, there will be peace in every home, peace in the nation, and peace in the world, because that is what Jesus Christ preached.
And that concludes the news. Stay tuned for more on Good Morning Nigeria with Kingsley and Jome after the commercial break. Good morning.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Up next is business news.
Micro, small and medium enterprises subsector of the economy contributes approximately 60% of the total gross domestic product and is also responsible for up to 80% of total employment.
A lot of young people, involving themselves in, production of grain. Everybody wants to get skillful because that's where the money is coming from now. So we can't really rely on the government for everything. So as an individual, it's encouraged that you get yourself involved in anything you can do that can get money for you.
At this point in Nigeria, we've been able to make a lot of heads in Nigeria against what we used to have. We have a lot of braid wigs which are made in Nigeria. We have a lot of human hairs which we bring in Nigeria and we weave. And honestly, if you know the number of hair vendors on Instagram and on different platforms selling hairs, then you know that the hair industry has really contributed a lot to the Nigerian economy. There is a lot that still needs to be done. If they invest a lot of money, especially in coupling most of these hairs in Nigeria, we can actually bring in the raw materials, the bundles, and set up those factories.
To scale up production and value of small enterprises, industry players want government to strengthen its intervention in the sector to reposition Nigerians' MSMEs in the international market.
By the time people encourage themselves, go into different types of production, definitely it will help the economy, it will help the currency that is falling every day.
Sesame tops the list of agro-export commodities with a probable export value of 41.9 billion naira, while cashew nuts valued at 13.7 billion naira. The figure, according to the Federation of Agricultural Commodity Association, represents a 128% increase compared to the 55.8 billion naira in first quarter of 2020. The report also posits that the global demand for the commodity is expected to grow at 4.2% compound annual growth rate by 2024.
All right, many thanks, Comfort Amodu, for the business news package. Coming up next, newspaper review.
And our newspaper reviewer, Chukudi Okoli-Okbaji, is in the studio, seated. Good morning.
Good morning, Jomai. How are you doing?
I'm fine.
I hope I don't sneeze through this one.
I pray you don't.
I won't cough. I won't extend it to you. I promise. Good morning, Kingsley.
Morning, Chukudi.
I like your haircut.
Thank you.
It seems you do it every 3 days anyway.
All right.
So you notice he got
Why would I not?
Oh.
You're my colleagues.
So, Jumai, let's begin with the Punch newspaper, which you have, I believe.
Yeah. We have the Punch newspaper. Let's quickly go through it. And above the masthead, we have Chinese loans rise by 209% under Buhari. Chinese loans rise by 209% under Buhari. You find details on page 27. NGX suspends Sterling Bank share trading. Details on page 33. And federal government to demolish Lagos Airport jet hangars April 15th. You find the details on page 30. And the picture story you see there, Pope Kagama preach love service as Christians observe Palm Sunday. You can see the pictures there from Abuja, Lagos, and Ibadan. At the bottom plate of the Punch newspaper, Ramadan, while the aged may abstain from fasting. Ramadan, while the aged may abstain from fasting. Details on page 26. FCTA returns 217 street beggars orders to home states. Find that on page 5. 17 other suspects arrested over Zamfara APC office invasion. Details on page 26. And the headlines in the Punch newspaper, end of tenure. Buhari or Shimbajo, 28 governors, ministers to begin asset declaration. With riders, outgoing public office holders must declare assets by May 29th. CCB official. President-elect Tinubu Shatima, 28 incoming governors get CCB form this month. Kesley.
Okay, we also have the New Telegraph newspaper. New Telegraph newspaper, the front page is pretty busy. Above the name flag, you have the following headlines. Loans. Nigeria's domestic debt stock rises by 151.3% to 22.2 trillion naira under Buhari. Uncertainty over Nigeria as OPEC Plus makes 1 million barrel production cut. That's on page 2. Senate presidency, Mark Saraki era stirs up fresh challenge for APC. And Benue APC tackles autumn over cargo airport project and appointments. The writer says, I still have right to employ and appoint. That's according to the outgoing governor. Lawyers, fiscal autonomy for state judiciary will aid quick justice delivery. I should have knocked out Franklin. That's according to Anthony Joshua, who won by unanimous decision. Alleged non-recognition. E-voting innovators slam 77.5 billion naira suit on INEC and federal government. Accused commission of suppressing information on I-voting proposal. Palm Sunday tragedy. Gunmen attack worshippers, kill one, abduct resident pastor and 4 others in Benue. Pope presides over mass after hospital stay. Lagos Rail Project, Bishop Oyedepo's hangar and others for demolition. And then you have other headlines there. It says AMCON appeals judgment, says court affirms receivership over Arik Air. Obaeware, that's of Benin, suspends Enogie, that's Professor Gregory Akenzwa, over alleged planned revolt. Details on page 25. Kosi beats Nigerian, Kanaga Jr. and others to emerge BB Titan winner. Cashless policy. Governors meet with CBN, EFCC, and others over security votes management Tuesday. Study links higher magnesium intake to lower dementia risk. That's the head story. Details on page 27. And then very quickly, Leadership newspaper says bandits attack Niger communities, killed 13, abduct scores. And then some of the stories already read are also there on the front page of the Leadership newspaper. Lead story says confusion in Obi's camp over leaked election phone call. Police obey court judgment, release 67 vehicles to Shiite members. Agora policy to federal government, fortify anti-corruption measures. Chukudi.
Bandits attack Niger communities, kill 13, abduct schools. When these bits of news come out, the tendency is for people to begin to treat it as regular news. No, these are not hens. These are not fowls. These are not goats. These are not sheep. These are human beings like us. What I'm going to say is that our troops have, in the past 7 months or so, really started showing a lot of diligence, much more than what has been happening. I think the re-equipping and all that are coming into, effect. What we can wish them is to still go great guns at what they do and make sure that the lives of Nigerians continue to be protected. When you hear that a bandit has knocked the life out of a fellow human being, you feel bad. And I keep saying that when these things happen, don't send to know for whom the bell tolls. English poet John Donne will tell you it tolls for thee as well. We pray that more effort will be put in so that our fellow Nigerians stop dropping dead because somebody carries the ill will plus an AK-47. Transparency, due diligence, that's due financial diligence, removal of suspicion over officials' intention in government. That's what I'm attaching to the story that Buhari Oshibajo, 28 governors, ministers, are to begin assets declaration. Outgoing public office holders must declare assets by May 29, so says a CCB official. CCB, by the way, is a Code of Conduct Bureau. President-elect Tinubu Shetima, 28 incoming governors to get CCB form this month. Now, it is very important that we play in the open when we play on the arena of the public. Public office is something you hold in trust. Let us not ever, for one moment, joke with the need for us to tell Nigerians, this is how we're getting into government, and this is how we're getting out of government. There's a lot of suspicion in Nigeria about the intentions of public officers. And institutional checks should not be relaxed for one moment. While we'll pray that men of honor, men of integrity, become more preponderant in terms of the number of people who are aspiring to lead us. Yes, I have one here that is of interest to me, but I think a scientist is trying to draw attention to his works. All the same, abstract teaching scares students away from mathematics. I confessed here that I wrote it 3 times and failed it 4 times. So when I hear people say this, it gives me a lot of hope that mathematics can be given a human face so that people do not experience the kind of ordeal I went through. It got so bad at a point that the maths teacher, Mr. Konko, caught me in class. I'd not run to the library to read on Her Majesty's Secret Service, Dr. No, Goldfinger, all those James Bond series. So he caught me. You know what he did? He put me on the table and used me to teach symmetry. If I divide Chukwudi into 2 and what's on this side, I felt that very bad that day. Mathematics, please wear a more human face. I think this is media gossip. Confusion in Obi's camp over leaked election phone call. Sometimes you begin to think that our colleagues don't have a lot of news these days. So anything they sniff out from anywhere begins to become headline.
But it's from the social media.
I wonder why this is happening. Anyhow, that's the way it is. And that's what we have to deal with.
Well, I was looking at, the FCTA returns 217 street beggars orders to home state. I think that's a good move.
Returns them where?
Home. To their home state.
Won't you see them again after 3 days? A friend of mine said something that scared me silly. He said, Chukwudi, you see these beggars who come out as early as 5 in the morning? There are vehicles that drop them here and take them back. That somebody is running a beggars or a begging racket. Can you believe that for one moment? Why is it that men have become so unscrupulous? You are banking on the misfortune of another person. He leaves the camp. What is it now? The camp, these people are settled. People from the conflict zone. They leave their camp and you take them onto the backs of your trucks to make money. And at the end of the day, you say you're raising praises to God and all that. It's not right.
It doesn't make
Let them
sense.
come down
There should be
hard on them.
stronger laws. to
So when
prevent-
did you get to know about this of the pending racketeering?
Actually, there was this station. We're not going to say the number of stations I've worked for. I know where you're going. Anyhow, there was this station I worked for, and the proprietor actually told me, Chukwudi, one of the stories we should do is to go out as early as we can and catch these people as they are dropping the beggars. Well, I was so sure.
Yeah, but the reason I'm asking is that some years ago I witnessed it myself.
You did?
Yeah, sure. Here in Abuja, it's not an uncommon thing. So getting them back to their various locations is a proper thing to do. It's just that we have very weak social welfare systems, and so we just assume that begging and vagrancy are the things that are normal, for poor people. And part of what we also see is that you see young persons, virtually children, who should be in school. They are all running around the streets in the morning
The
hours.
minors.
In the morning hours, when their mates are in class. So who has responsibility for those persons? So in Abuja, anybody who's been around Abuja for some years now would have noticed a rise in the population of these street children, if you may. And how would that also be a surprise? Because we have also seen the jump in the number of out-of-school children, estimates between 18 and 20 million. You can plead and say, oh, insecurity in different parts of the country has pushed people that. Well, we also have IDP camps. And so what is operational in the IDP camps? Supposed to provide some succor and then have alternative learning environments for them in that place. You see, the hazard, when I see some of these young persons, it doesn't matter wherever you are, whether you are in the southwest, in the south-south, middle belt, or anywhere in the north, and you see these children. You are going to work, you're coming back, you see them in 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Those children are also growing. They are growing. Because if you saw them last year, by this year they would have added 1 year to their respective ages. Now, as you are going about your own legitimate activities and your own children are being trained, these other children they are getting maladjusted. And the next thing, of course, you say, oh, there's a spike in crime. Oh, there's X, Y, Z. It is when we fail to cater for this kind of persons that we then begin to face more severe social problems. And I think that there's just no, people go to study social welfare and you find you are looking for the outcomes of their exertions in terms of their engagements, and there's nothing to show for it.
Nothing.
Part of what you also see,
same, on and on.
yeah, some of these street kids, they are the ones who are used to vandalize public infrastructure, including the removal of manhole covers.
That's just one aspect. They are used for all criminal activity. Anything at all you can conceive. Because their ability to say no is at a very low ebb. That's the point.
No, it's worrisome.
It's worrisome, exactly.
It's worrisome. And in some parts of the Federal Capital Territory, for instance, where they have removed the iron manhole covers, the authority just left the manholes exposed.
Somebody broke a leg, when they plunge into that iron manhole.
Well, the thing is, again, we are not. Sometimes when you say these things, people just think that you are encouraging litigation. You sue the authorities.
Of course.
That's what it means. It's our responsibility to do that. And I hope that our judicial system begins to take cognizance of that. Protect the way the manhole covers are stolen. They do it gradually. Around the CBN, if you are driving between the central bank, between the National Mosque and the central bank on that on that parkway, watch the manhole covers. They have removed some of them. Others, the concrete stops in the cubes, they are chipping at them. You will see if they are probably say 16 squares or 27 squares, you will see one day one square goes off. And that time they chip it off, and then gradually until they are able to weaken it and then take it off. So And then some people just drive through. There are persons whose responsibility it is to look at those things. There are persons who responsibility. There are some parts of the country where there should be no street begging. There should be no vagrant persons. You create a home, assuming a welfare home for these children, and then give them instruction, let them go there. Persons who want to give arms, persons who want to provide sustenance, not necessarily sustenance, who want to provide meals and clothing for them, can go to those locations. Not people just roaming around the streets, and it's not healthy.
It's scary.
They actually get their own back on us.
Well, let me ask this question. In January and February this year, how many of the reports of this nature were we reading? Bandits attack communities, kill 13, abduct scores. We also read in our headline, 2 female students abducted from Federal University Guzo. Abductions, that is to say kidnapping for ransom. So I'm asking this question, in January and February this year, how many of such stories were we reading? So why are we now seeing a spike in those stories?
More money. There's money now. You can.
So they couldn't. The cashless policy became their greatest deterrent, and now that the money is out, they want to rear their ugly heads again. No, it shouldn't happen again.
Okay, Chukwudi, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Jumai.
I hope you get better.
I told you I will not sneeze through the program.
Thank God you didn't. You're also watching Good Morning Nigeria. We now take a break. When we return, our conversation will begin. To stay. This is Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And to begin our conversation on threats to May 29 inauguration, here's a background put together by Ekene Ndulu.
The 2023 general elections have come and gone, but the dust is yet to settle. The aftermath is seeing political actors occupying the media space with claims and counterclaims on their perceptions of the outcome of the elections. Though Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been declared president-elect by the electoral umpire, the 2 major opposition parties, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and the Labour Party, say they are not accepting the victory and have filed petitions in court to contest the election results. The legal and media tussle between the ruling political party, APC, and the opposition parties is seeing speculations run rife on the possibility of not having a presidential inauguration on May 29th. Apparently, May 29th has been cast in stone, and there are no plans to change the date. This was confirmed by the chairman, Presidential Transition Council, and Secretary to Governments of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, who recently announced that the presidential transition process is on course and there will be peaceful transfer of power.
By the grace of God, there will be a formal handover on the 29th of May. It's a constitutional matter, and it has to be resolved. All litigations, whether resolved or unresolved, will not in any way stop the formal transfer of power. President Buhari is not spending a day extra after the 29th. He would hand over power to whoever has been declared by INEC. The court processes will continue, and whatever determination the court does, even after the swearing in, it has always been accommodated. This is not the first time we have run elections. This is not the first time people have assumed offices, and litigations continue.
The Department of State Services, however, has come out to say it has identified some key players in the plot for an interim government in Nigeria. The nation's secret police did not mince words to describe the alleged plot for an interim government as an aberration to the practice of constitutional democracy that undermines civil rule and can lead to an avoidable crisis in the country. Meanwhile, the DSS is assuring Nigerians of a seamless presidential inauguration come May 29. Since the red alert by the DSS, Nigerians have openly and roundly condemned the alleged plot, while calling on the security agencies to expose and arrest the plotters. Who are the plotters of an interim government? Will the institutions of state fold their arms and watch democracy truncated in Nigeria? On this episode of Good Morning Nigeria, guests shall be discussing the threats to May 29 presidential inauguration.
Many thanks, Ekene Undulwe, for that backgrounder. And just to say up front, we don't know who the plotters are. We'll, of course, expect more information from the Department of State Services if and when they do come up with such information. But we'll be discussing issues around the threats, as you said, to the May 29th inauguration, following the claims and counterclaims in the air about the plot to install an interim government before the 29th of May, or with effect from the 29th of May. We have a number of guests for this conversation. Let's welcome a regular Good Morning Nigeria engineer Yusuf Sani Yabagi, who is the national chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC. Engineer Yabagi, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you, Kingsley, for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right. Also here with us in the studios is a legal practitioner and political analyst, Dr. Sijuade Kayode. Dr. Kayode, we're glad to have you this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay.
Good to see you. And from our Benin studio, we're being joined by Tony Ambolo, a veteran broadcaster, sociologist, media consultant, and trainer in media studies. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Jumai, and my good friend Kingsley Osadolo. Nice to be here.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mr. Tony Ambolo, for your kind words. But let's begin the conversation with our guest here in the Abuja studios. That's Engineer Sani Yabagi. And for two reasons. Not just the fact that you are chairman of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, but also because you were a presidential candidate in the February 25th elections. And as our backgrounder kicked off, saying the elections have come and gone. The dust, of course, is yet to settle because there are persons who are aggrieved with the outcome. And the grievance redress procedure is to say, take your petition to the election tribunal. And in this case, for the presidential election, it's the Court of Appeal that acts as a court of first instance, with always an opportunity to go to the Supreme Court if you so desire. This is not the first time that elections have been conducted in the Fourth Republic, and persons dissatisfied with the outcome of the elections have chosen to challenge the outcome of the polls. Even from the very beginning, in 1999, they have always gone to court. Give us the benefit of an insider. What is at play here that instead of just saying, look, we are challenging the outcome of this election, there is this buzz about an interim government?
Well, thank you, Kingsley. I believe that to us, the political class, and if you like, IPAC, this is something strange to us because it's in the realm of perhaps the security agencies whose ways of doing things are normally shrouded in some secrecy and what have you. But what is embarrassing is the pronouncement, or announcement rather, by DSS that we have identified people with entrenched interest in the system who are planning something untoward to the system itself, like democracy. So that's why we came out to say that please name those people and arrest them, because that's your job. You have the mandate. You don't need to seek any approval from any agency or anybody for that matter. The Constitution has given you full powers to act in the interest of the country. So this is why when you say somebody is planning interim government, my knowledge or my understanding or experience of interim government is normally formed by a constitutional authority. It's not a political party or a politician somewhere, because you don't have the wherewithal to form a government after another government. How do you do it? So it's only a constitutional authority, a sitting government, that can put in place an interim government. So Are they saying, I don't know what they're saying. So that's why I said, for as far as we are concerned, there's nothing like that. And what you hear is the normal, complaints. Not only in this country, even in the so-called developed democracies, you have people, saying that, no, I don't agree, we have this, Trump was all the time saying that his election was rigged and he didn't accept it and what have you. So there's nothing wrong with people say, I don't accept, and so I don't think there's nothing strange that is happening yet as far as our democracy is concerned. And that's why we said that much, at the ICC when INEC was collating the results. And some people felt that it should be stopped. Why? Because they felt the law, as it were, and the promise given by INEC was not, followed. And they wanted to stop. Say, no, we don't stop a process. You can't stop this process. It's like a moving train. It must get to its destination. Otherwise, it will be an accident. And when there's an accident, what happens? You don't know. Nobody knows what can happen. You probably do not have even train anymore, or you have, something that you cannot, use anymore. But we want this democracy to stay. We don't want to lose it. That's why at that place we said we must go on to the logical conclusion of this process, which means INEC must declare somebody the winner, the person must be sworn in, and then the redress will go on. Because unfortunately or fortunately for us, our laws do not say that you can't swear in the so-called winner, until after all the cases are dealt with, by the courts. So if that's what the court says, and that's what our constitution supports, then we must go on so that we can have democracy, regardless of how it may look. It doesn't matter, if it was a stolen mandate or it was a mandate given freely or whatever it is, we have the opportunity of really interrogating it and coming out with the realities of what happened. And we can then decide at that point in time. That time we still have democracy. It's not something else that may come, which we cannot, nobody can tell you what the end of it is going to be. So this is our position as political parties. And also as the presidential candidate, as a Democrat, I believe that there must be a winner. It isn't that you must win. If you don't win today, tomorrow you win. But that is not to say those who went to court were wrong. No, we must interrogate so that we will have documentation, real, assemblage of what really happened. So that's why I always, salute the courage of those who go to court, so that positions. Oh, this is
discretion and thoughtfulness. But
swear in, and it is always done instantly. They don't waste any minutes or seconds, to do that. So the process is so robust. It has that capacity to accommodate our feelings and as human beings, because this is a human process. This is something that is a social process. It's not something so mechanistic that you can take from here and put here. It's something that you must follow the process to its logical conclusion within the boundaries of the law. And that's what we believe in as Democrats.
Okay, Engineer Ayabagi, thank you so much for your opening comment. Let me come to Dr. Sijuadu Kayode. There's a lot of tension in Nigeria. Everybody knows that. And the statement by the DSS sort of raised the blood pressure of so many Nigerians wondering how. But the problem, my question is, why bring up an issue like that if you cannot name names? As we know in Nigeria, there's never smoke without fire. Let's have your take.
Thank you very much. I believe the DSS is within its powers and purviews to make that statement. Not only is it timely, but also a sign that the DSS knows the plans of people in Nigeria, what they are planning with respect to the elections. Having said that, now, the Constitution is very clear about this. Section 1, subsection 1 of the Constitution states that the Constitution is supreme and everybody must abide by its tenets. Then Section 1, Subsection 2 states that no persons or group of persons shall take over the control of the government of Nigeria in any way that is not stipulated by the Constitution. And now the Constitution has stipulated how to be validly elected to the position of the president or the governor of a state, for example. Okay? The electoral process, the whole of it, the gamut of it has been done from primaries to campaigns and to the general elections. And a winner has been declared. The law states clearly that in an election in Nigeria, whoever is declared officially by INEC is the winner. If you don't agree with that, you go to court. The processes are there. The tricky part is this, and I believe this is why the DSS is saying what they're saying. For example, peradventure, the courts give a judgment, okay, after inauguration of the president-elect and nullifies the election. What happens? It can't be a sitting president. Okay? You have to step down for a new election to be conducted. Then who becomes the president? Maybe the National Assembly would not have done their in-house election to, to elect this, the president of the Senate, who's supposed to take over as president, interim president. Okay? So in that instance, what happens? So
there's a vacuum.
That is the vacuum. That's the tricky part. And that is what the DSS, I'm sure, believes people want to take advantage of, just in case the court nullifies the election. But it's, of course, it's neither here nor there. People can think or plan whatever they want to plan. But the point is, our laws are clear. The Constitution is clear on this. So the issue of interim government is not only illegal, vexatious, but it's unconstitutional, totally. It is unconstitutional, totally. And we will remember in history that was one of the reasons General Abacha toppled the government of Sonecon, because the court declared that interim government as unlawful, illegal, and unconstitutional. That was what President Abacha took to overthrow that government. So we cannot have the same scenario play out again. Okay? So issue of interim government is unlawful, it is illegal, and it's unconstitutional. That's what our law says, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Sijuade Kayode, for the issues that you have raised. I'll come back to drill into them further in the course of this conversation. From Ibadan, as the capital of Oyo State, we're being joined now by another regular on Good Morning Nigeria. That's Professor Emmanuel Remi Ayede, Professor of Political Institutions, Governance at Department of Political Science, University of Ibadan. Professor Ayede, we're glad to have you this morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning as well.
Okay, well, so we pause you and then return to our Benin Network Center, where Tony Abolo popped up a while ago on the split screen. Mr. Tony Abolo, I'd like to take advantage of your veteran status so that we can piggyback on some of the occurrences in our polity in the past. It was always, if you like, mentally challenging for the political class, and sometimes this was pushed to the generality of the people, that one of the major challenges that we had with our country was seamless transmission of power from one civilian administration to another. And many, of course, point out to what happened in the First Republic, and more essentially also the challenges that we have faced in the course of our democratic odyssey. And that it is usually in that process of transiting from one civilian administration to another that all kinds of problems crop up. Some would say shenanigans. But many also would have argued that after 2015, when a challenger defeated the incumbent, and the heavens didn't fall. If anything, Nigerians took it in their stride. Many Nigerians would have felt that we had overcome that mental block, as it were, to say, look, how do you conveniently transfer power from one civilian administration to another, whether of different political parties or the same political parties? It would appear, some are arguing, that the whole idea of an interim government, illegal or unconstitutional as it may well be, is exhuming yet again that age-long challenge of seamless transfer of power from one government to another. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you very much, Kingsley. Truth of the matter is this. I'm glad you posited the question maybe from a historical perspective. And I would like to drag Nigerians back correctly. One, I'm sure we all remember General Ali, who was the Chief of Army Staff in, I think, the days of Abacha. Now, when he was being pulled off from the army, he did make a comment, which I think we should recall. He said, this is a country of anything goes. We should bear that in mind. And we should underline the fact that it's like the joke everybody makes in this country by saying, maybe even in pidgin, waiting they never see for this country. That's exactly what is happening. And mind you, this is a country of one-offs, many one-offs. We were here in the Shagari days when Akinjide went to defend Shagari, to give that defense of 12 2/3 of 19 states then. And what happened? We were told not to quote that 12 2/3 as a precedent, but leave it as is. And of course, that was the first one-off. Then the second one, we woke up. How did Jonathan come to power? Doctrine of necessity. One-off. And now we are face to face with an imponderable, a legal and a constitutional imponderable, which is interim government. Now, we all tend also to forget that ever before the primaries last year, it was Afe Babalola, SAN, who maybe was flying a kite or was just sharing thoughts, but he was the one who first talked about a possibility of an interim government. And we didn't put thoughts to it. We didn't share anything much more than that. But I think this is the time for us to see, even we in the media, when somebody makes some pronouncement that could be injurious or that could bifurcate or could create any trends, we should query and examine what the fellow is saying. And now, here we are. Now you ask yourself, is it possible for an opposition to put in an interim government? Is that possible? Or is it the demonstration we are seeing, the pictures and in Abuja around the Fountain of Unity? Are they the people to put in an interim national government? Or even what looks like an abstruse theory, could it be APC versus APC? That looks so distant to think about. But remember the Naira redesign, when it was APC versus APC. So, could it be one version of APC that is creating this problem? We know it's going to be difficult. Or are we trying to imitate what happened in the Francophone countries when they were doing sovereign national conferences, when it was the parliament that was sovereign and the head of state was down? And is that what we want to recreate? And if we want to do an interim national government, where will the Senate be? Where will the House of Representatives be? All these are difficult questions. But then it also rankles when DSS comes on with this announcement that, oh, they have identified the interim national government plot is real. Then I say to myself, why do they love to come to the media? It's just like we query EFCC coming with media trials. Why does the DSS, do they report to Nigerians? They report to the presidency. So why don't they do the normal process of, intelligence, then there is arrest, then there is arraigning, there's prosecution. All that has been left away, and then we are trying to worry our lives about a possibility. But I'm glad when Prince Sijuade was talking about the tricky part of this journey. And I don't know whether we are going to enter into that pothole. If we do, it's going to be sad. But now that, in fact, that he has mentioned it, we should now begin to think, what happens should the court so decide? Because this is the first time we're having this loud, unnecessary distraction. Usually it's an election. Like Engineer Yabagi was also saying, yes, it's good, the process is, we finish, there's contestation, there's legal processes, and then, well, anything happens, and then we ride on. Or as you say, when after 2015, we just took it in our stride. But this time, this is the first time after the trouble with the beavers and IREF. That is where this problem is anchored. And who knows that whether the people are so aggrieved that they want to do something funny. But we like to believe that the state as Nigerian state will want to stand up and hold on to the democracy in such a way that we can go on without this hiccup, because it will be terrible, because we will be moving towards anarchy, and indeed, God forbid.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tony Abolo from our Benin Network Center. Let's join Professor Emmanuel Remy Ayede. We've had 24 years of democracy. This is the first time we had such a long run in this country. We saw videos of politicians protesting even the 79 elections. My question is, are we taking steps back, or is our politics evolving, or like Mr. Tony Abolo said, we might fall into the pothole?
I think it's important for us to recognize that institutions become strong when they are tested and they pass through crisis and they're able to stand. And I think that because we have had democracy for 24 years, does not mean that we are now free from all kinds of challenges. I think that this is also not the first time that elections have been contested, and we have had situations where those challenging the presidential elections have gone the whole hog till the Supreme Court decides on what the outcome will be. We didn't have this kind of alarm in terms of what the DSS has done, suggesting that there was a conspiracy to impose an interim government. I think that, as Tony Abolo has said, it is not the responsibility of Nigerians to deal with the intelligence that comes out of the DSS, except they are directly affected and they have a role to play in trying to ward off such threats. So it's really strange that the DSS is putting it in the public gear. I think one of the response that we have gotten from the political parties is the fact that it seems the DSS was planning to clamp down on the opposition party leaders, and it's creating an atmosphere for it to be able to do so. Otherwise, one would wonder why that kind of information will not be taken to the ears of the president rather than the Nigerian public. I think that the petition in the courts will go on, and I don't see them being concluded for 29th May, which then means that the whole idea that there's going to be a vacuum, and therefore people are capitalizing on that to promote the interim national government, it's not well-founded. Even Afe Babalola, who broached that idea before the elections. And his argument is really that Nigeria is so divided that what is required is not to go on with election, but to look at the very foundation, which of course he was referring to the 1999 Constitution, for us to look at it carefully again and see if we can create a better constitution from the foundation of an interim national government. I don't agree with him, and I don't think that it's a very firm foundation on which to found any democracy. What has happened and what experience has taught us is really that constitutions, no matter how beautifully written they are, cannot be assessed except they are implemented and practiced over time. And one of the characteristics of constitutionalism is that you subject such constitution to amendments when you confront issues and challenges. And I strongly believe that this democracy has started on that path, and they will be able to do so when we confront certain challenges, like we did following the death of President Yar'Adua. I don't think that we should really think that this democracy is going to come to an end. I think the DSS should do the right thing rather than embarking on some kind of scaremongering, which I think is what is going on. Otherwise, the Constitution, as the legal practitioner has said, does not provide any room for an interim government. And we also know what happens if, for instance, the election is even annulled by the courts, or the presidential election is another presidential election is called by the court. We've seen it in gubernatorial elections, and it did not create any vacuum in any of those states. So I think the process will run, and if there's another election called, the election will be conducted, and there will be no room for interim government at all.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Emmanuel Ayede, for the points that you have raised. Well, Jumai and gentlemen on the set, let's also be clear about something so that we are not apparently blindsided by the provisions also of the Constitution. Happily, Dr. Sijuade Kaude is not just a political analyst, he's also a legal practitioner. And the point is as follows. The Constitution has ample provisions for the declaration of a state of emergency. And that state of emergency could be in one part of the country or throughout the entire country. And the conditions for declaring the state of emergency and the duration of such emergency are also clearly stated in the Constitution. But Dr. Kaude, those conditions and the state of emergency do not equate to an interim administration.
Thank you very much, sir. First of all, I would like to say this about the statement by the DSS. I support the statement and I support the DSS. You know, this is precautionary. This is being proactive. The DSS is saying, we know that you are planning something. We are aware of it, and we are going to crush it because it's treasonable to even think of it. So I'm in support of the statement by the DSS. It's in order.
Your support of it going public too at the same
Yes, publicly to say it, so that the perpetrators will know that the DSS knows what they are planning, and the DSS is ready for them. That's very important. It's key to let Nigerians know that, so that peradventure, people are invited or arrested or prosecuted, nobody will cry foul. So it's in order, and I support that statement. Now, going by issue of state of emergency, you know, state of emergency to be declared, there are certain conditions that must be in place. One of it is that if Nigeria is at war, or if there is a natural disaster that is so overwhelming that the government has to create a state of emergency. A state of emergency is different from an interim government, totally. A state of emergency is implemented by a sitting government that still has its validity. But for example, President Buhari is leaving government on May 29, 2023. The Constitution has stated it. He has done his 2 terms of 4 years, 8 years. He's leaving. The Constitution is clear on that. And the president-elect must be inaugurated. The court cases will go on, and the Supreme Court, maybe up to the Supreme Court, and there will be a judgment eventually. Okay? And we must move on with our lives. The elections are done. In the election, there will be a winner, no matter what happens. We saw it in America. Donald Trump lost. He protested. He didn't want to leave, but eventually he has to obey the Constitution. The Constitution is very clear. Nobody's above the Constitution. Okay? And both the contestants, INEC, DSS, even President Buhari must obey the Constitution. That's what the Constitution says. Section 1, subsection 1 is clear. That's paramount to any other part of the Constitution. That the Constitution is supreme. And we all love that we are in a democratic dispensation. And this should continue. This must continue. And I'm happy that the DSS, the security agents, are on the same page with Nigerians on this. That any act or any call for interim government is treasonable. It's unconstitutional, it's illegal, it's vexatious. And we hit up the polity. And people who are perpetrating this, we are telling them to desist from it. Because we Nigerians are going to resist it. We will resist it. And I'm very happy with the statement of the DSS. It is the right thing to do. Thank you very much.
All right. I just, Juma, just again to restate the point that I was talking about in terms of not conflating a state of emergency with an interim government. Interim government is a stranger to the 1999 Constitution as amended. We have seen, since 1999, the declaration of state of emergency in some parts of the country. We saw that, for instance, in Plateau, when the state of emergency was imposed on Plateau. General M.C. Ali was then appointed as the administrator Plateau. When a state of emergency was also imposed on Ekiti, late Brigadier General Tunji Olure was appointed administrator. And then, of course, in the northeast, at some point, on account of the activities of Boko Haram, President Goodluck Jonathan imposed a state of emergency. When it elapsed, there was an attempt again to reimpose the National Assembly. They didn't go with that. So that's why I said that the procedures for imposing a state of emergency are clearly stated. The Constitution itself is an organic document. So why then are we having this strenuous, as it were, desire by some elements to say an interim government? Nigeria has also seen an interim government in the past. Yes. This was, of course, from the military administration of General Ibrahim Babangida on account of the June 12 crisis, when late Shonekan became ING chairman. Why is anyone daydreaming of a return to that era, General Yabagi?
Yeah, well, it's as a result of the high level of discontent, tones that we are having, in the political space itself. Yes, you have opposition that is saying that they are not going to have this because the elections were not conducted in line with the established, laws, extant laws, and the regulations of the INEC. But we said that is not enough to stop the process, because what they are saying is within the confines of the process itself. Then, like Prince has said, perhaps they are not just complaining. Maybe there are actions being taken, which is known to, or being contemplated, which is known to DSS. And then DSS now, came out to say, we know what you are doing, and this is not in line with the Constitution. So what we are saying is that, like he has also agreed, nobody says DSS should not do their job, but they should do it in a manner that does not overheat the polity itself again, and does not give an impression that maybe it's like, they're trying to give a dog a bad name to hang it, because it has happened, it's happening in other crimes too. People will cook up anything and then just go and arrest somebody and put them behind bars and say, we are doing this and you are not doing, So that's why people are afraid. We're afraid that where is this coming from? Why is it not coming from the way it's supposed to come normally? And knowing fully well that some people are not in the good books of the government because they're in the opposition. And don't forget that DSS, of course, is there for the nation, not for the government. But you have to look at the relationship, which is a normal thing. I mean, it's the legal, constitutional relationship between the sitting government and DSS. So some of us in the opposition are afraid that, the power of incumbency will not be applied, and then maybe something untoward or something unusual will happen to our members as a political class. So that's why people are saying, no, we don't take this, do your work, the way you are supposed to do it. So having said that, the issue of the constitutional, the interim government, and then like you said, the state of emergency, the constitution is very clear on each. And the constitution is also very clear as far as I don't think we'll get into anything like interim government. Even if at the end of the day, after somebody has been sworn in, and the courts found that it's not the right person, the Constitution provides, for the system still can function within, the confines of the system. The Senate President is there, and then you have it all down to the Chief Justice of the Nation and all what have you. So there's never going to be a vacuum to say that there's going to be interim government, that will come into place. So this is why some of us believe that it's like you are calling wolf where there's none. That's what we are talking about.
Okay, let's talk about before going to the elections. Political parties signed peace accord, saying there will be no violence, there will be no intimidation at the polling units, and the president has been emphatic: if you do not agree with the results of the election, go to court. Why are we seeing a scenario like this now? Is the peace accord just on paper?
No, the peace accord itself presupposes that laws are going to be followed. The INEC is going to do what they're going to do. Everybody will behave, all things being equal. I think it was, and things are never equal in any case. So I think that's why, you must also understand our situation in the country. That's why here I've said that maybe we are being too ambitious, with the issue of relying on this technology advancement and things like that. Because when you look at, that's why sometimes you have to look at INEC also as a victim of the circumstance, really. Because now, look at the situation with our communication systems. There's so much deficit in terms of their efficiency, for them to really cope with what we wanted to do. And look at even the process itself, in the electoral, it wasn't really completely digitalized, automated. Because, in fact, you know why we're in this problem now? The key node, in the process was left as it were, which created the problems we have. Which one? The collation of the results. Nothing was done to it in terms of technological innovation to do it, to automate it, that you wouldn't have somebody interfering with that process. And that's why elections are won or lost, because people interfere. INEC people interfere, and then, you still left it the way it is, that somebody now will determine if what you are coming from the polling unit is perhaps 1,000, you expect somebody at the collation center to record that 1,000, isn't it? Yeah. Now, we know that sometimes they are compromised. They will require 100 for, which we have seen, which are the cases that happen in this election, where you scored 1,000, they go and record 10, for you, and they collect it. So and that's why I said the key element, the key node, the critical aspect of this system was left, in the way it was.
Well, Engineer Yabagi, thanks.
That's why the results coming out are different from what happened, at the polling unit.
Well, thanks. I would like Mr. Tony Abolo to also respond to this. Mr. Tony Abolo, well, two things here in terms of, again, the attitude first of the contestants in the elections and the populace. From what Engineer Yabagi is saying, if there were instances of lack of fairness in the outcomes of the elections, has this welled up a great deal of anger and disgust in some persons who would not say, you are telling them on the one hand to say, look, go to court, but they themselves are saying, look, what does it mean? Why didn't you do the right thing in the first instance? Therefore, I think the best bet is to do something that is unconstitutional and will turn the entire tables all around and get us back to less than square one. Are we dealing with a binary situation here? And if that is the case, how do we address them successfully to ensure that at the end of the day, we still find recourse to what the Constitution provides and what law order would mean?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. I want to put my finger exactly on what Engineer Yabagi has just said. And that is what we ought to be doing in this country. I want to see a situation where ideas are thrown into the public space and people buy them. I like to believe that, let's say, INEC is listening to this program or watching it, and then they will now say, yes, that is the lacuna. And if we addressed it, then we'll not have this heated up situation. Because, like I did also say, the problem is really located in the BVAS and INEC commitment that INEC gave to all of us. And the parties were trusting that that is what will happen. But then they all of us forgot that that human element of coalition was what was not digitized. And so I like to believe that if we digitized the entire process, from where the BVAS identifies you, you do your voting, and then the collation is done digitally, then we'll now be able to avert this kind of crisis that we're in. So those who have, because it's humongous money that political parties have spent, and if it was you, would you like to spend maybe 30 billion into an exercise and it just goes up in smoke? No. So they're rightfully angry. then we as a people, remember, the kind of things we've dragged through this last 8-9 years, it's not been an easy country. And so even that makes people very angry, very incensed, very unreasonable. And so again, we allow socio-cultural organizations even to make pronouncements. That is one area which I thought in Babangida days, when he now said, let's remove the socio-cultural organization from making any comment in the national polity. We thought he was wrong, but now in reflection, I think he was right. Because these kind of things are happening. You find somebody maybe from an ethnic group, you get his major socio-cultural organization backing him, making a statement, and then it inflames the entire place. So we like to believe that INEC should listen and discover that, or rather say to itself, we should begin the digitization process from where it all begins. So nobody argues. And we were promised it was going to be real-time online. And did it come out real-time online? It's weeks after we're beginning to hear of uploading, glitches. All that grammar is what you are hearing. But that wasn't what we thought. We thought as soon as you finished voting, the results were uploaded. And of course, anybody can watch it on iRev. And so you confirm to yourself that it is well done. So I believe that something went wrong in terms of our capacity to deal with technology, our capacity to realize that there's an element that wasn't figured or factored into the process, and here we are. And so you can't blame the politicians, you can't blame the parties. And so anybody who's dissatisfied, well, a culture will come when we'll be more calm about these things. Because, I mean, I'm sure Professor Ayede will agree with this, and he teaches political science, that one of the things you learn is that democracy is a journey, and therefore it will take a long time for us to evolve into a situation where you go to vote, the votes are cast and counted, and then we now say, well, that's the result, and everybody goes home. We look forward to that day.
You've raised some pertinent questions, and let me bring in Professor Emmanuel Remi Ayede. You know, you've been listening to the conversation in the studio, and while a lot of people are saying that the election, 2023 election was not transparent, the DSS in its statement said the election was peaceful, and it is the alleged plot by politicians that could plunge Nigeria into crisis. Yes, 24 years of uninterrupted democracy. Well, we've seen what happened in America in 2020. They have more than 200 years of democracy, but still that happened. What next?
Well, I think that we have actually gone beyond the kind of crisis that is supposed to be an immediate reaction to the outcome of the election. What we are in now is a process which is quite part of the democratic process. That is, those who have lost and they think that the election was not credible should go to the courts, and they are there. And I think we'll see the courts doing their job and taking a decision on the status of the election. So I don't think that we're still in the course of the crisis that's coming out of that election. Except, of course, the announcement of the DSS is actually an attempt by the government that has the capacity to institute an interim government to test the waters. Except that that's the situation, then we have a major cause to worry. Because that's an interpretation that we have not put in the public sphere. If that is not the case, then of course, this is not the first time that people have contested the outcome of election in the courts. And this is not also likely to be the last time this will happen. So I believe strongly that the courts will do their job, the process will run, and then once the decision is taken, what is appropriate to be done. I don't foresee a situation where the country will be plunged into crisis as people react to the election. And I don't also see the courts taking a decision that would be so controversial as to create an uproar and uprising in the country. I think the Nigerian judiciary is a conservative one. They are not likely to create the kind of vacuum that will lead to all kinds of intervention. I suspect that by the time the court decision will be taken, all democratic institutions would have been taken up by those who have been elected, and whatever happens will follow the constitutional process.
Right, Professor Emmanuel Ayede, thank you very much there for your comments. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service and from our Abuja headquarters studios. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation. All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have all our guests. Tony Abolo, veteran journalist and broadcaster in Benin, Professor Emmanuel Ayede via Zoom in Ibadan, Dr. Sijuade Kayode here in the Abuja studios, and Engineer Yusuf Yabagi here also in the Abuja studios. Engineer Yabagi, I want to come back to you on a point. Because if you recall, we had you as a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. One, when we were discussing issues around the then Electoral Act Bill, Electoral Amendment Act Bill, which eventually now became the Electoral Act 2022, and the key provisions and how those provisions were held. You spoke always on behalf of IPAC, which is the various political parties. Electoral Act 2022 was an innovation, an improvement on the 2010 Electoral Act. That's right. We have also seen amendments to the Constitution talking about the timelines for litigation of election petitions and appeals. Because one of the challenges that we had in the early part of the Fourth Republic was that, for instance, a person could be in the House of Assembly or in the Senate or elsewhere, our litigation would drag on to the expiration of the term for which the person was said to have been elected. And if the outcome was against him, virtually the person who had justice would not be able to enjoy the fruits of the justice. So we now had amendments to say restrict the timelines. And that goes on and on to the back end of it to say when lawyers must get their documents, get the court papers, file their appeals, and so on and so forth. And in some cases, we have seen how litigants or petitioners have lost because they filed outside of the time frame. Right. If politicians are aware of this, to say that there are timelines, why the seeming impatience in saying that May 29th will not be a reality?
Well, it's like we have said here, that is not peculiar to us alone. I mean, U.S., was supposed to be the model as far as the system we are operating is, which is executive. The presidential system which we are operating. They had spent, like Juma said, 200 years, plus, but they still had the case of somebody saying, I do not agree, yes. That Biden should not be sworn in and what have you. And then you mobilize people to the Capitol Hill, and then, insurrection. So this is, you see, in democracy, this kind of temperaments, perhaps, play out, but the system has the capacity to contain all those things that will happen, So that's why, to us, like I said, it's normal, that provided, like I said, provided the agencies themselves that are supposed to protect democracy do not engage in something to sabotage the system. Otherwise, we, the players, the system has the capacity to contain us, whatever we are doing, provided the agencies themselves are not guilty of undermining the system. Because when they become, saboteurs, we have lost it. So this is why we've been shouting that, as far as we, the politicians, are concerned, we want this process to continue to its logical conclusion. We're not thinking about anything ING or whatever. All we are saying, we are complaining of what went wrong. And we are complaining because we want to have corrections in future so that we will not, be in this situation that we are in today, whereby, what you expect is different from what you get, what you get is different from what you are expecting, rather. So these are the things that you hear politicians, shouting addressing press conferences and what have you. Nobody, I haven't heard anybody coming out to say, well, if somebody says, this person cannot be sworn in, he can't be, do this, well, he's saying it. He knows that the law, the Constitution, like he says, Section 1 of the Constitution is supreme. And he says, you can't, the Constitution say, do it. So you, the individual, cannot, not even the president, sitting president, can stop it. So it's allowed. It's like you and the football. When things are happening, you attack each other, you do this. Or the referee can raise a yellow card, or if it need be, they can give you a red card. But that doesn't mean you stop. No, they will go on.
It went on yesterday with Newcastle against Man U. 2-0.
So it doesn't mean that somebody has sent out of the field or somebody has been given a yellow card. It doesn't matter. Whatever the case is, whatever INEC as a referee, did to us. He gave some of us yellow card, some he gave red card. so the game, must go on. We must complete. We must finish.
The same way Real Madrid finished yesterday, 6-0.
Yes. So that's what it is. Exactly. So it doesn't mean that anything is going to happen. That will affect the entire system itself. No, that is what I want people to understand.
Indeed, not everything will affect the entire system. And, democracy is for the future.
Exactly.
Elections is for the future. We have a generation coming up with a high IQ. We call them the digital generation. And the social media sort of rules the way they think. It dictates what they do in their life. And there's so much negativity on the social media and some broadcast stations, if I might say that. What they see, at times, I myself, if I see some videos, I have to come back to NTA, all news to really know if it's there or not. But how do we begin to tell this generation coming up that it is not that bad? Democracy can be done in a civil manner. Elections can be done in a civil manner, and a winner will be declared without having recourse to go to violence or demonstrate or just go crazy on the street and believe everything the social media dishes out there.
Well, I would say this, that in the past 2-3 years, there has been this political awareness, especially among the youths. But most of them have not been following politics for the past 10 years or 15 years or 20, so they don't know so much about politics, how politics work. We must understand that. Now, the government had tried in the past to regulate the social media as it were, and we young people kicked against it, we protested against it. But we know that the cyberspace must be regulated. That's why we have the, the laws on cybercrime. Because a video or a tweet can start an insurrection, can start a crisis in a country. And what will the government do? Government has to regulate it. Nigeria is a democracy, and we must be glad that we're Nigerians. On other places in the world, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, they are banned totally. They are banned, and you will not know until you travel to those countries and you see that they are banned. Because they know the power of social media, the power of the youth. You see some videos sometimes, and it is unbelievable what that video is. You will now find out that that video was artificially generated, was doctored. And that is why, in our courts, it took a long time before the court started recognizing electronically generated evidence. To present electronically generated evidence in court, you have to sign a certificate of compliance, like an affidavit, stating that this document you have printed and you have presented is genuine, the facts contained therein are genuine, and if you lie, you will go to jail because that is perjury. Because our court system know the dangers when it comes to electrically generated evidence. So the youth are learning, and I'm happy with the political awareness, and I know that no election is perfect. The 2023 election is better than 2019. I can say that for a fact. I'll give INEC a pass mark on that. And I know that 2027 will be different. A lot will happen between now and then. The courts will make some pronouncement that will change our laws, as it were. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Sijuade Kayode. I want to return to Professor Emmanuel Aide in Ibadan with us via Zoom. Professor Aide, well, there were two comments, one from Mr. Tony Abolo and the other from yourself. Mr. Tony Abolo invited our attention yet again to the humongous amounts that candidates and parties had spent in the just concluded elections, although you still have a few of the elections still outstanding. I mean, these amounts will run into several billions. And as it were, if you're a loser, it means that all that money has gone up in smoke. I know we can talk about the electoral system, but in the context of the threats to the May 29th inauguration, I want us to come back to an issue that is also our reality. Earlier, you also invited attention to the fact that, okay, what we may have is judicial restraint rather than judicial activism, which brings us to the point that no one ever declared, for instance, the president-elect has been ousted judicially upon consideration of a petition or an appeal. Could this then be part of the anger that some persons are feeling? If on balance of convenience, it is clear that a candidate, for instance, who scored over 8 million votes could not have invested those votes ex nihilo. So what is it that needs to be done? Is it that people just give the credence to the fact that, oh, once we are declared winner, then nothing can happen in our system? If there are good grounds, why not?
Yeah, I quite understand your concern. You know, I was speaking with some young people on Saturday, and they were expressing anger about their role in that election, saying that they didn't get what they want and that their effort amounted to achieving nothing. I had to bring it to their attention that that's not quite correct, that they have in fact registered their presence in the electoral process, and then they have made a difference in certain respects, even if they didn't get the ultimate goal. This is simply because democracy is a game of temporary victories, and if you have a president-elect, he's not going to be president for more than 4 years. You still have to come back again to the electoral tour. And for those who have spent a lot of money, I'm sure they were also aware of the implication of the fact that in every election, only one candidate wins. Now, if they are dissatisfied with the process, they know what to do. But yes, there's a question about what the judiciary will do and whether it has resolved to always approve any electoral outcome because it doesn't want to overturn the vote. I don't think that can be taken as a QED. That it has not happened in the past does not mean that it will not happen. And originally, it was not only the presidential election that we thought would never be overturned. Even state governorship elections were considered a result that could not be overturned. In fact, the argument was really that it was difficult to prove electoral malpractice. It was difficult to prove that there's no substantial compliance with the Electoral Act. All of those, of course, were not borne out by practical experience. I think it would be preemptive to make the argument that because the Supreme Court has not overturned a presidential election in the past, that it will never do so. I think the point that I've tried to make is to say that even the Supreme Court decision will not come in a manner that will create a major imbalance, because balancing set is also part of the responsibilities of the judiciary, and the judges know how to do their job. So I am not very pessimistic in terms of what the outcome of the decisions of the court will look like. I think it's still better to exercise patience and recognize the fact that democracy is a game of temporary victories. I've listened to a politician who said that losing an election is like losing a child, which, of course, we understand the depth of grief that such outcome bring along. But we know that democracy has its own values, and we must try to be patient and live with the situation, hope for the better. In any case, the democratic process is not about any individual or any political party. We must recognize that the life of a country is longer than the life of an individual, and we only play a part as long as we are alive to do so. The country will outlive us, democracy will outlive us, and they must make it sustainable. And that is the least that we can do as politicians.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's quickly join Tony Agbolo for his closing comment. And I'm going to throw you briefly, please, in 30 seconds, the power of the media and how it influences the psyche of the electorate. Let's have your take on that before we go.
Well, if you want my thoughts on that and how the media can affect the psyche of the electorate and the people, we have a contribution to make in terms of keeping a keen balance in the polity. Ours is to make the information that is implicit, explicit, make sure that things that are difficult to be understandable, and to create leading ideas. That's the function of the media. And if we do that, when going forward, I'm sure we will be able to handle the polity and handle the politicians and ensure that people look forward to 2027, that all is not over, but something has happened now, but we're going to build on it. I'm sure that's what the media can do. We can't do much more than that.
Okay, thank you so much, Tony Agbolo, a veteran broadcaster, sociologist, media consultant, and trainer in media studies. Thank you so much for coming. And Professor Emmanuel Remi Ayede, Professor of Political Institutions, Governance and Public Policy, Department of Political Science, University of Ibadan. Thank you so much for your insightful response to our questions. And here in the studio, Dr. Prince Sujuade Kayode, a legal practitioner and a political analyst. Thank you so much for coming. And in our Abuja studio still, Yawagi Yusuf Sani, the National Chairman, Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC, Engineer Yawagi. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, do you mind, we want to end it by appealing to Nigerians to bear with INEC. It's the institution that we must grow, you don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. I'm not saying those who have committed offenses should not be dealt with, in accordance with law. But the institution, we have a milestone, isn't it, in the journey of building democracy. So let us bear with them and then see how we can help to grow that institution.
Okay, thank you so much. We now go to our sports desk for details on the sports update.